Welcome back, Pre-Algebra. We're in Lesson 6. We're going to review reading and writing decimal numbers, adding and subtracting decimal numbers, and rounding decimal numbers. So we have noted that whole numbers have a decimal point just after the last digit in the number. Sometimes that decimal point is written, but most of the times it is not. And for that reason, we can recognize that 615 here can also be written 615 with a decimal there. We will see that more often when we talk about money. We see it written like that. That's $615. That's what we're used to seeing. But this is the same value at 615 of something, and this is 615 of dollars, and there's no change. So we write the decimal in 2 zeros because we only have 2 decimal places with money. But they're the same thing. They're 615 regardless of whether we use the decimal place or not. Some numbers have digits to the right of the decimal point, and we call those decimal numbers. Some people also call those decimal fractions, and here is why. Whenever we have numbers written as whole numbers divided by 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, or some other multiple of 10, like for instance this right here, 6123 over 100, this is a division problem. The answer is going to be a fraction, 61.23. When you do the division like that, you get a decimal answer. The first place to the right of the decimal in a decimal fraction is the tens place. And it is the tens place because if you take 1 and you divide it by 10, your answer is going to be 0.1. That is one place. It's also, if you notice, 1 0. And if you look over at our original example, we have 2 zeros and 2 decimal places. So however many zeros you have that you are dividing by, that is going to give you the number of decimal places behind the decimal. So the first place, like I said, to the right is the tens place, which has a place value of 1 over 10. The next place would be, so this is 1 over 10. This place would be 1 over 100 because it's 2 places, 2 zeros. This would be 1 over 1,000, 3 zeros, 3 places. This place is going to be 1 over 10,000, right? 4 zeros, 4 zeros, 4 places, 4 zeros. This is going to be 1 over 100,000. 5 zeros, 5 places. So you see how that works out. So the thing to do to figure out what this place is called is to count the number of spaces here, put a 1 in front of it, and put that many zeros behind it. Drop in your comma, and that tells you the place value behind the decimal that you have arrived at. Okay? That's a little trick that I learned that really seems to help a lot of people. So if you continue looking at place value, you'll see that there is another pattern as well. So in front of the decimal, you had the ones place, right? Let me put a number here. You had the ones place, tens place, hundreds place, thousands place. There's no comma there. 10,000s place, 100,000s place. Then you had the millions and the 10 millions and the 100 millions, right? So you have a pattern here. We had ones, tens, hundreds, ones, tens, hundreds, ones, tens, hundreds, right? That's our pattern. The pattern also follows on the right side of the decimal. So let's put in some numbers here, right? So here we have 1 over 10. So this is the tenths place. We have 1 over 100 because it's 2 places, 2 zeros. That's hundredths. We have 1 over 3 places, right? That's thousandths. So then let me put a TH here. Then you have this one is going to be 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. So it's 10 thousandths, right? So that's the 10 thousandths place. And if you look, I'm going to do this. Thousandths. Everything behind the decimal, it's the same as it is in front of the decimal, except that we add this TH on the end of it. So here's your ones, your tens, and your hundreds place, right? This is tenths, and this is hundredths. And the reason we have that is because these are indeed fractional pieces. And we add that TH to the end of fractional pieces. And then over here after thousandths, yes, you guessed it, we have the millions. Only we call it millionths because it is a fractional part. So this would be the 1 millionths, the 10 millionths, and the 100 millionth. So you see this opposite pattern. Here we have OTH this way to the left, and here we have OTH to the right, and it's going to keep repeating as we go through. You have millionths, and then you'll have billionths, right? So it has this mirrored system that works very well, that never ends, right? Let's put some numbers in there. So if I were to ask you what this position was, what this place was, you could count and say, okay, that's going to be hundredths, 100 thousandths, 1, 2, 3, 100 millionths, 1, 2, 3, 100 billionths, right? So you can easily, you skip these two and then you go thousandths to 3, that's 100 thousandths, a millionths to 3, that's 100 millionths, and 1, 2, 3, 100 billionths. And you'll see that pretty readily. We're not going to deal with any numbers this big today, but it is good to understand the pattern so that if you understand the pattern, you don't have to memorize a chart, right? Understand the pattern and you don't have to memorize a chart. You can build it yourself as you see the number and work it out in your head. And the other trick, of course, is to figure out the number of spaces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Drop in your commas. And that's ones, thousands, millions, billions, 100 billion, 100 billionths. Right? And that's how you can do that. All right, so let's jump into a practice problem. We're going to read some numbers, and I am not going to write this out on the screen for this first problem, but maybe I will for another one. I just want you to listen for this first problem. Just listen to the sound of my voice. So here we go. Sorry I had to do that. That was like totally called for, right? Here we go. Let me write this here. This is A under example problem 6.1. And here's our decimal. So the way I would say this number, first I'm going to drop in my comma so I know what group it's in. I would say 4,165 and 162 ten thousandths. And the reason you say 162 thousandths is because if there is not a value, if there's a 0, you skip it until you get to the first actual digit that has a value, which would be 1 or greater. So the number we see here is 162. And then the place that you say is the place value that the last digit holds. And in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's, let me do this right. 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. So that's the 10,000th place, right? You can write it out and put TH at the end of it to help you say it right. Let's do another one. Let's see how that works out. And I want you to just kind of listen and look. Take a moment because this is a really big number. Just see all those zeros just falling into place there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to figure out what my decimal place is here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places. I'll write my TH at the end and I'm put my comma right there. So that tells me the place value of that decimal, right? Now I'm going to drop my commas in here so I know what my whole numbers are and I know where my groups are. And I know that the second one is thousands, and so that means this must be millions. So that's what I'm going to say. When I get to the comma, I'm going to say the end of the group. And then when I get through here, I'm going to say this. So 7,108,000. I don't have anything here. 21,578 100,000ths. Okay? That's exactly the way you say it. You look at it like it's a number unto itself, and you imagine there's a comma after 3 spaces, right? 1, 2, 3, put in your comma. 1, 2, 3, put in your comma, and you say it exactly the way that you would say this number, except that when you get to the end, you throw that on it, okay? You say that bit. Right, so now I am going to put up the way that it would be written. All right, so give me just a second and I'll do that for you. All right, so I wrote this out for us. So this first one, again, 4,165. 4,165. And on the decimal, 162 10,000ths, right? Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 with TH on the end. Okay, and then for B, 7,108,000, and here's the decimal. And we skipped all of this because there's just zeros. There's zeros, you just skip it, right? And 21,000, and we really shouldn't have that comma right there. But if you imagine it's there, it helps you. 21,578 100,000ths, right? 100,000 with a TH on the end. Notice every time I write a 2-word number, like 65, 62, 10,000th, 21, 78, 100,000ths, those have a hyphen, right, between them. So 2-word numbers, you put a hyphen between. And whenever you get to the comma in a number, you say the name of that group, which this would be the thousands group, and then you put a comma behind it. All right? Same thing in the decimal. If you have, that imaginary comma right there to group these by 3, then you put that comma when you write it out. 21,000, comma, 578 100,000ths. All right, so let's look at, let's see, do we have one more? Yes, I'm going to write them for you, and then we're going to write the numbers. So we're going to be doing the inverse operation this time. So hold on just a moment and I'm going to put that up for us. All right, so in 6.2 we have two options here as well, or two that we need to complete. And the first one is 15 and 31 hundredths, and I would strongly recommend looking for that word and. That's your decimal point, right? So 15 and, so that tells me 15 and then the decimal. 31 hundredths, so that tells me hundredths. So hundredths, that's two decimal places, right? So I have a 3 and a 1, so I don't need any zeros, so I can write it just like that. So 15 and 31 hundredths, right? So now let's look at the second one. We have 203. So that's written 203, just like that. And is my decimal place right here. And let me clarify, and does not mean the decimal point. It is not the definition of the decimal point. And just means we are adding part of a number to this amount of whole numbers that we have. You can say and where the decimal point is. We use that more in money than we do anywhere else. But and does not mean this is a decimal, right? Let me see, how do I say that better? It represents where the decimal is, but the true meaning of and means addition. It means to combine whole numbers with part of a whole number. So that's what it technically means. We say it when we have the decimal point, but and is not the definition of the decimal point, all right? I know that's a little confusing right now, but as we go forward, you'll understand more of that. So 203 and 25 thousandths. So thousandths, so we write 1,000. 1, 2, 3. That's 3 places behind the 1. So, but we have 25 thousandths. That's only 2 places. So what that means is we have a 0 right here and then the 25, because the 5 has got to be in this last position behind or at the end of all of it. So you would write the 25 to where 5 would be at the end and fill in the rest of the spaces with 0. So that would be the correct way to write 203 and 25 thousandths. All right, do you kind of see that little bit of a pattern there? So let's do a little bit of math with these. Let me clear the page. And we have two, oh goodness, I made a mess right there. Let me clean that up. We have two problems here for 6.3. A says 6.231 or 6 and 231 ten thousandths plus 4 thousandths. All right, that's A. So really all we have to do is rewrite this stacked together with the decimal points on top of each other. So I'm going to rewrite this like this, and I'm going to make sure to write this with the decimal point over each other here. Now, I don't have anything here, so I just put in a 0. And then I just add like normal, keeping things stacked on top of each other nice and neat, bringing down my decimal point, and that would be the answer to the problem, 6 and 271 ten thousandths. B is 6 and 23 hundredths minus 44 ten thousandths. So we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to stack it right on top of each other, lining up our decimal places as we do. So this is a subtraction, 0.044. So we have more spaces here than we do up here. What do? Same thing we did over here. We just put a 0 to fill in the blank or to fill in the gap. And then we do our subtraction just like we normally would, being careful to keep our numbers stacked on top of each other and our decimal places in a line. So this would become 10 because we're going to borrow from here and make that 2. But we can't take 4 from 2, so we're going to borrow 1 from here and make that 12. So 10 minus 4 is 6. 12 minus 4 is 8. 1 minus 0 is 1. And 6 minus 0 is 6. Make sure we bring our decimal point straight down. And our answer is 6 and 186 thousandths, because we have 3 places, and that would be the thousandths place, right? Because we have 3 zeros and the th on the end. So that is how we would subtract decimals. It's the same way we would add them. If you have any positions that don't have a digit, you just fill it in with a 0, just like we did on the bottom here and on the top here. So easy peasy. So the next thing we need to think about, we've already talked about rounding whole numbers. So now we need to talk about rounding decimal numbers. How does that work? It works exactly the same way as rounding whole numbers. We look at the number to the right of the number we need to round and ask ourselves, is it 5 or more? Is it halfway to the next number or not? That's really what we're asking. So let's look at this number here. This is problem 6.4. And we are given this number, 212. And it's a really long number. So I'm going to write it down and just let you kind of look at it there because, yeah, it's really long. We're going to round this to the nearest 10,000th. And I've got to remember to spell. All right. So 10,000th, that's what we're going to go to. So in order to figure out which one that is, we write 10,000 right here, right? Count the zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how many places behind the decimal we're going to go to. So that's 4 zeros. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the number we want to round to. So we look to the number to the right of it, which is this one, and we say, is this 5 or more? Is it halfway to the next number or not? It is, because it's 7, and 7 is greater than 5, right? It is, let me see how I can write this. 7 is greater than or equal to 5. We haven't gotten to inequalities yet, but they'll be so fun when we do. Is it 5 or more? Yes, it is. So that means we round it up. So in order to round it up, all we have to do is bump this up 1. So we would say 2, 1, 2, decimal place, 0, 1, 6, and we're going to take all of this and round this number up 1, and that is our answer, right? And we already know it's 10 thousandths because we counted it out to start with. So it's 212 and 166 10,000ths. And that would be our answer for 6.4. So let's do one more like that. Let's do 6.5 while we are at it. And it is another big, long number. And I'm going to write it down right quick. All right. So we are going to round this. It just tells us to 2 decimal places. And we know that 2 decimal places is the hundredths place, right? Hundredths, 2 decimal places. So 1, 2 decimal places. That's the place we need to round to. So we're going to look at the number to the right of it. Is this 5 or more? No, it is not. So what we are going to do is just write this number the way it is and stop. We're going to get rid of all this right here. It goes away because we're rounding. We don't need the extra information. We're giving an approximation. So we don't have to be specific, this specific anymore. We're shortening it up, right? So that is how you do it. It is exactly the same way that you do it for whole numbers. Nothing changes. The only thing that you have to remember is it's going to say what place sometimes that it wants you to round it to, and you have to remember how to get to that place. So just when it says 10 thousandths, you write out 10,000 and count the zeros, and that's how many places that you go to. Easy peasy. So let's see. Do we have... No, we don't have any other practice problems. We are completely done with lesson 6, and I hope that you had as much fun doing it as I did, and I will see you in lesson 7. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me. I am here to help.